On the day of my bat mitzvah, I stood giddy and nervous in front of all of my family and friends. It was one of those crazy moments where I have to tell myself, take it all in, because I know I won't get the same experience again. What I hadn't realized until I looked out at that sea of supportive faces was that for me, the most meaningful thing about that day wasn't that I was going to get to read from the Torah for the first time, or become a Jewish adult. But instead, the most meaningful thing was the feeling of being in a room of people who were there to lift me up. There's a Hebrew word, hineni. Its direct translation is here I am, but it also represents a Jewish concept of being present and showing up. Showing up is one of the most important parts of Judaism, and at my bat mitzvah, there was everyone showing up for me. I am grateful to my Jewish community for this support. Being a part of my Jewish community also led me to attend Camp Havaya, a Jewish summer camp. Camp, for me, reflects some of the best parts about Judaism. The feeling of community is particularly strong. Everyone knows everyone else, and pre-existing social walls break down. It doesn't matter where you come from, everyone finds a friend. We learn together, we practice Judaism together, and we grow up together. You learn how to fully appreciate other people. Yet while my Jewish upbringing was filled with community, learning, and celebration, what I didn't fully appreciate then is that my Jewish experience is not universal. I now know that some branches of religion are not as inclusive. In the most traditional form of Judaism, women are not allowed to read Torah or have a bat mitzvah. Had I joined a more traditional synagogue, I would never have had that special day. I would never have felt celebrated by my community in the same way, nor would I have been introduced by my synagogue to its affiliated camp. In your last summer as a camper, you take a trip to Israel. It's really cool to be traveling with the kids you spent your past 8-ish summers with, but not only that, Israel is a country that was created as a safe haven for Jews and that is rich in ancient Jewish heritage. Yet many things that I experienced and witnessed on my trip strengthened my feeling that religion can be problematic. We visited the Western Wall, the last remaining wall of the Temple of Jerusalem, a holy site for Jews. It is run and controlled by Orthodox Jews, a traditional and very observant denomination of Judaism. Women are not allowed to read Torah at the wall, or sing or pray loudly. They are also separated from men and given a much smaller section to pray in. Although I was welcomed as a Jew, I was silenced as a woman. I felt that Judaism in this context was misapplied and exclusive. Later in our trip, my group met with 2 Arab Israeli women. They explained to us that although they are citizens of Israel, because they are Muslim and Arab, they are considered second-class citizens and have fewer rights than their Jewish counterparts. They have limited access to quality education and resources, and their language, Arabic, has recently been removed as an official language of Israel. During the panel, one woman broke down when asked if she's connected with her family outside of Israel. Through tears, she explained that she is not able to visit her relatives in neighboring Arab countries because her passport is Israeli. She is not accepted in Israel because she is Arab, and she is not accepted in other countries because she is Israeli. In a similar way that I had struggled at the Western Wall to reconcile my identity as a woman with my identity as a Jew, this woman was struggling to reconcile her identity as an Israeli with her identity as an Arab and Muslim. Neither of us were able to fully embrace both aspects of our identity because of religious exclusion and discrimination. For many people, including myself, religion provides a sense of belonging. But for some, this sense of belonging can become so extreme that it morphs into a sense of self-righteousness and creates alienation from others. In order for them to feel secure in their belonging, others must be excluded. This creates a situation of us versus them, where those who don't belong are delegitimized. I observed this on my trip as well as throughout history. Many times this religious extremism has resulted in violence or hate crimes. But I wonder, how am I even Jewish if I feel such contempt for religion? Many young people have rejected religion. They feel that it is oppressive or not relevant and have separated themselves completely. I felt conflicted. On the one hand, I have seen the ways in which religion can be a force for good. It can create supportive communities through which to celebrate and to mourn. On the other hand, it can be used to justify intolerance. In Israel, it felt easy to spend time at the Western Wall or hear those women's stories. and conclude that religion is all bad. But on my trip, I began to see ways in which religion not only harms, but also helps to heal. At the end of our visit, we met with a representative from Women of the Wall, a Jewish organization that fights for women's rights to pray at the Western Wall. They protest against the Orthodox interpretation of Judaism at the Wall. They create space for themselves as women in Judaism. I was inspired by this group of Jews' ability to embrace their religion while speaking out against the divisions it causes. For some, a strong attachment to Judaism in Israel creates a feeling of superiority that is divisive and destructive and used to validate the emotion of Arab Israeli citizens and to justify Israel's military occupation of Palestinian land. But through my connection to Judaism, knowledge of past oppression of Jews, and experiences of anti-Semitism, I empathize with the Arab women that I met. Maybe Jewish values and Jewish community could aid in organizing around and empathizing with people affected by the conflict. This idea led me to read about the If Not Now movement. If Not Now is a movement of Jews working to end Israel's occupation. If Not Now writes, as we were dehumanized by the oppression we faced, we are now dehumanized by that which we are inflicting. To me, this means that as Jews have been oppressed in the past, we must speak out against oppression now. If Not Now is also committed to connecting their movement to Jewish values and Jewish tradition. They don't reject Judaism because of the actions taken by Israel, but instead use it as a way to organize and speak out against them. I realized that it's not helpful to look at what's happening at the Western Wall or with Arab Israeli citizens and reject Judaism in its entirety. I have long felt that my ties to Judaism conflicted with my belief that religion can be used for harm. What I realized is that the two are not mutually exclusive. When religion is abused by extremists, it is not the fault of the religion, but it is the responsibility of opposing sects of that religion to speak out against the misuse. I see this in my synagogue community. My congregation is Reconstructionist. Reconstructionism is a branch of Judaism whose mission is to adapt Judaism to suit our changing world. It recognizes that religion does not have to be static, but can instead evolve as society progresses and social norms change. Reconstructionists find the part of Judaism that are meaningful in our modern society, while rejecting the aspects of the religion that produce exclusivity or discrimination. While I had grown up in this community, I hadn't fully appreciated the ways in which the movement gives a collective voice to its members concerned with these issues. The Reconstructionist movement takes positions and publishes statements on political and social issues such as the Israel-Palestine conflict, Jewish support for the LGBTQ community, and U.S. immigration policy. This form of progressive religion has strength in its willingness to criticize interpretations of the religion and in its ability to provide a platform for speaking out. Similarly, in response to restrictive laws within Islam that infringe on women's rights, a women's organization called Musawa, which means equality in Arabic, is fighting for equality and justice in Muslim families and protesting against religion used to justify discrimination. The organization has done research and published reports on women's lives under Islam. It educates women on their rights within Islam and seeks to amplify female voices in international advocacy. They still practice Islam, but try to adapt it to be more inclusive of women. To belong is to keep working for all who want to belong. From within an inclusive religious community, one can work to help those who are oppressed by their own. I feel that it is my responsibility as a member of the Jewish community to speak out when Israel takes actions that I disagree with. This responsibility stems from three main sources. First, Jewish values teach us to practice tikkun olam, which means repair of the world. In other words, Judaism promotes helping others and seeking social justice. Secondly, a history of the oppression of Jews obliges Jews to help those who are oppressed now. Lastly, my involvement in a Jewish community gives me a platform to be outspoken about Israel, and therefore my silence is complicit. Through speaking out, we can evolve towards more inclusive religious communities. Speaking out comes in two forms: publicly speaking out against oppression, and speaking out to bring in, to welcome others into progressive religion. Welcoming is its own kind of speaking out, leading by example and showing that all people can and should be included. But my position from which I speak out is one of privilege. I'm not acting actively oppressed by the intolerance that I observe, only connected to it through a shared religion. My story is very different than that of a person who's discriminated against within their community or their family for an aspect of their identity such as being gay. These people cannot speak out in the same way that I can because they run the risk of violence or harm if they do so. That is why it is so important for those with privilege like me who can speak out to do so. Inclusive religious communities can provide a safe haven for those who are oppressed and can collectively speak out for them. For this reason, it is imperative that inclusive religious communities exist and are recognized. It may not be possible to eliminate oppressive branches of religion, but we can strive for the norm to be religion that is embracing. We need to give progressive branches of religion a stronger voice, to validate religion that takes a modern approach, to recognize that there is more than one acceptable way to practice a religion. We can affiliate with religion while being willing to criticize from within. And even if you yourself are not religious, you should expand your perception of what religion means. The first step is to not fall victim to stereotypes about religion. Don't make terrorism jokes about Muslim people. Don't allow the actions of the Israeli government to define Judaism. Be critical of the media you consume and the biases you bring to it. Who wrote the news article about Israel that comes across your feed? Whose perspectives have they considered? The next step is to seek out ways to better understand liberal religion and see it in action. Visit a service at a progressive religious community. You do not need to be religious to join religious groups in their work for social justice. Find organizations and creators on your social media that present a variety of perspectives on religious issues. Check out If Not Now and Musawa Movement on Instagram to read more about these organizations and issues. It is with these shifts in perspective that inclusive religion can become the norm, expanding the spaces in which people are accepted and the platforms for speaking out. We need to say Hineni, I am here, not just within our communities or for those we love, but I am here for those who are oppressed. Thank you.